This is not a drill. Stop what you are doing right now, because what just happened in one of the most strategically critical regions on the planet is something every American who cares about this country's global standing, its defense partnerships, and its future influence needs to understand completely. The United States made a historic offer to one of the world's largest democracies, a nation of 4 billion people that Washington has spent 2 decades carefully courting as the anchor of its Indo-Pacific strategy against China. And that nation just said no. Not a polite diplomatic maybe, not a request for more negotiations, a clear, unambiguous rejection. And then within months, that same nation signed one of the largest military aircraft deals in human history with France. The numbers here are staggering, and we are going to walk through every single one of them because the numbers don't lie. While Washington was busy imposing tariffs, issuing ultimatums, and publicly humiliating one of its most important strategic partners on social media, Paris was quietly, methodically, and brilliantly building the kind of long-term defense relationship that takes decades to construct. 114 advanced fighter jets, $39 billion. The largest single military procurement in Indian history, and not $1 of it is going to an American company. If you have been watching this channel and following what has been happening to America's alliances, to its partnerships, to the trust that generations of American diplomats and military leaders carefully built around the world, you know this story fits a deeply disturbing pattern. Before we get into every detail of what happened, how it happened, and what it means for every American taxpayer and every American veteran who served in the Indo-Pacific, I need you to do one quick thing. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel and turned on that bell notification, please do it right now. Because stories like this one, stories about what is happening to American power and American credibility in real time, are exactly why this channel exists. All right, let's get into it. In February 2025, President Donald Trump stood in the White House alongside Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and made what he described as a landmark offer. The United States would, in Trump's own words, quote, clear the way for India to potentially purchase the F-35 Lightning II, the most advanced stealth fighter jet in the American arsenal and, by any technical measure, the most capable mass-produced fifth-generation combat aircraft on the planet. It was a dramatic moment. The F-35 had never been offered to India before. It represented on paper exactly the kind of deepening defense integration that American strategists had been pushing for since the George W. Bush era, when the United States first signed a foundational defense framework agreement with New Delhi. For a brief moment, it looked like the crowning achievement of 2 decades of patient diplomatic work in South Asia. By July 2025, that offer was dead. India told American officials it was not interested. Let that sink in. The United States offered India the crown jewel of its aerospace arsenal, a fighter jet so advanced that even close NATO allies have to fight for allocation slots, and India walked away. And then, by February 2026, India's Defense Acquisition Council, chaired by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, formally approved the acceptance of necessity for the purchase of 114 Dassault Rafale fighter jets from France in a deal worth 3.25 lakh crore rupees. That translates to approximately $38 to $40 billion. Not 38 million. $40 billion going to France, going to Dassault Aviation, going to French workers and French engineers and the French defense industrial base, while American aerospace sits on the sidelines watching. Here's what nobody is talking about when the cable news channels give this story their 5-minute treatment. This is not simply a defense procurement story. This is a geopolitical earthquake. India is not a small player that Washington can afford to lose. India is the world's most populous nation. India is the 4th largest economy on Earth by purchasing power parity. India is the linchpin of every serious strategic framework the United States has for countering Chinese expansion in the Indo-Pacific. The Quad, the security dialogue between the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, exists precisely because Washington understands that without India, there is no credible counterweight to Beijing in Asia. And yet here we are. To understand how the United States fumbled what should have been the most straightforward strategic partnership of the 21st century, we need to go back to the beginning. India's relationship with American defense hardware has been growing steadily since 2005, when the Bush administration signed the new framework for the U.S.-Bush-India defense relationship. Over the following 2 decades, India purchased Apache attack helicopters valued at $3 billion, Chinook heavy-lift helicopters, P-8, Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft for its Navy, and a $4 billion agreement for MQ-9B Predator surveillance drones, signed in 2023. By any measurement, the trajectory was upward. American defense exports to India were accelerating. The relationship appeared to be maturing exactly as strategists in Washington had hoped. Then came the tariffs. On July 30, 2025, President Trump posted on Truth Social announcing a 25% tariff on Indian imports. But he did not stop there. In the same post, he publicly accused India of buying too much Russian energy, of maintaining defense ties with Moscow, and of being an unfair trade partner. This about a country Washington had been assiduously courting as a strategic counterweight to China. The response from New Delhi was controlled, measured, and absolutely devastating in its implications. India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal acknowledged the situation in Parliament, and the Modi government quietly accelerated its pivot away from American hardware. And folks, this is where it gets really concerning. Because India did not simply reject the F-35 out of spite or anger. The rejection rested on strategic, industrial, and technological grounds that Washington had every opportunity to address and chose not to. India's entire defense procurement strategy revolves around its Make in India initiative, a framework that requires foreign suppliers to transfer technology, enable domestic production, and build genuine industrial partnerships rather than simply selling finished products. The F-35 program, by its very design, makes this impossible. The United States has never offered source code access for the F-35 to any partner nation. It has never offered significant domestic production rights. The aircraft is built to be sold, not built together. As former Indian Air Marshal Anil Chopra stated publicly, India remains cautious about the American tendency to exert pressure and, in his words, abandon allies when its own interests diverge. He pointed specifically to Washington's history of favoring Pakistan and its role in delaying deliveries of GE 404 engines for India's own domestically produced Tejas light combat aircraft by approximately 18 months, a delay that set back India's indigenous fighter program by years. If you are subscribed to this channel, you know we have been following the slow erosion of American credibility with its partners for months now. And this story is perhaps the clearest illustration yet of what that erosion looks like in practice. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video because this is the kind of strategic context that mainstream coverage simply does not provide. Let's keep going. The contrast with France could not be more stark, and the numbers tell the story completely. France sold India its first batch of 36 Rafale jets under a government-to-government agreement, and all 36 were delivered by 2022. Unlike the F-35 offer, the Rafale deal came with technology transfer provisions, indigenous content requirements, and a genuine industrial partnership framework. The new 114-jet deal goes even further. At least 80% of the aircraft, approximately 90 jets, will be assembled inside India. Indigenous content is targeted at 30% of total value, with negotiations ongoing to push that figure higher. Dassault Aviation CEO Eric Trappier confirmed in March 2026 that if the order proceeds, France will establish a second Rafale assembly line at Hyderabad on Indian soil, employing Indian workers, building Indian aerospace industrial capacity. That is not a transaction. That is a strategic partnership being built for decades. I want to be clear about what the complete picture looks like. The 114 jets approved in February 2026 are not the whole story. In April 2025, India separately signed a contract for 26 Rafale main carrier-based fighters for its Navy, with deliveries expected between 2028 and 2030. The Indian Air Force already operates those 36 Rafales delivered by 2022. Add those numbers together, If the full procurement proceeds, India's total Rafale fleet will reach 176 aircraft. 176 advanced multi-role combat jets from a single French manufacturer in the world's fourth largest economy, with assembly lines on Indian territory, while American aerospace manufacturers watch from the outside. The broader defense package approved by India's Defense Acquisition Council in February 2026 totaled 3.6 trillion rupees, nearly $40 billion across multiple procurements, categories, and while it did include Boeing P-8I Poseidon aircraft for the Indian Navy, the centerpiece, the headline, the historic acquisition that will define India's air combat capability for the next 30 years, is French. The cascading consequences of this strategic failure are not theoretical. They are already materializing in ways that should alarm every American who understands what is at stake in the Indo-Pacific. China currently operates over 200 J-20 stealth fighters, fifth-generation aircraft that American defense planners spent years urging India to counter with an F-35 purchase. Instead of an Indian Air Force equipped with American stealth technology, integrated into American tactical communication networks, operating from the same doctrinal playbook as the United States Air Force, Washington now faces the prospect of its primary South Asian strategic partner flying French aircraft, integrated with French systems, increasingly connected to French defense industrial infrastructure. The interoperability implications alone are significant. Every joint exercise, every coordinated response scenario, every contingency plan built around the assumption of deep American-Indian defense integration now requires revision. The economic consequences extend far beyond the defense sector itself. Lockheed Martin, which manufactures the F-35, is based in Fort Worth, Texas. Boeing, which produces many of the naval and support aircraft in the American defense portfolio, is headquartered in Arlington, Virginia. The American aerospace and defense industry employs approximately 2.5 million workers directly and indirectly across the United States. India, as one of the world's fastest-growing defense markets, with a budget that has increased by approximately 13% annually over the past 5 years, represented an enormous future revenue stream for American industry. That stream is now flowing to Paris, to Dassault Aviation, to Safran, to Thales, to French companies and French workers. The dramatic summary is inescapable. America's tariff strategy cost American aerospace workers one of the largest potential contracts in the history of the industry. There is a deeper question here that we all need to sit with carefully. What does it say about the state of American strategic thinking when the imposition of tariffs on a democracy we need takes precedence over the defense of our long-term strategic position? What does it mean for American leadership in the Indo-Pacific when our response to China's aggressive military buildup is to pick economic fights with the one nation uniquely positioned to serve as Asia's democratic counterweight? The men and women who built America's post-war alliance system, who traveled to New Delhi, who negotiated framework agreements, who built the Quad, who extended unprecedented defense cooperation to a country that had spent decades in the non-aligned movement, they invested that effort because they understood that America's security in the 21st century depends not just on American power, but on American relationships. These are real people affected by what is being described here. American defense workers, American veterans who served in the Indo-Pacific theater and believe in the mission of keeping that region free, American citizens whose retirement savings are tied to the performance of defense industry stocks that just watched $40 billion walk out the door to a competitor, families who depend on the long-term health of American strategic alliances for their own security. The United States is not powerless here. The India relationship remains important to both sides, and the underlying strategic logic that makes India essential to American Indo-Pacific strategy has not changed. What has changed is the trust, and trust, once damaged, is not repaired by tweet or tariff reversal. It is rebuilt through years of consistent, respectful engagement that treats partners as partners and not as economic targets. France understood that. And France is now building fighter jets in Hyderabad, while Washington is still figuring out what just happened. Drop a comment below. Tell this community what you think America's path forward looks like in South Asia. because this conversation matters, and this community deserves to have it. Here is where this lands. India chose France. India chose a partner that came with technology transfer, domestic manufacturing, genuine industrial cooperation, and a foreign policy posture that did not include tariffs and social media attacks on Indian trade practices. The $39 billion Rafale deal is not just a procurement decision. It is a verdict rendered by the world's largest democracy on what kind of partner it wants for the next 30 years. America had every opportunity to be that partner. America chose tariffs instead. This is not the America that built the post-war international order. This is not the America that spent decades cultivating relationships in South Asia, precisely because American leaders understood that great power competition is won through partnerships, not just military hardware. The generation of Americans who lived through the Cold War, who watched the Berlin Wall come down, and believed that American values and American leadership could shape a better world, they deserve a foreign policy worthy of that legacy. The farmers in the Midwest whose soybeans face Indian import barriers that might have been negotiated away in a trade deal. The defense workers in Texas and Virginia whose jobs depend on the health of American aerospace exports. The veterans who served in the Indo-Pacific and who believe in the alliance architecture they helped defend. We are better than this. If this video has helped you understand the full scope of what just unfolded between Washington, New Delhi, and Paris, the real strategic cost of America's current approach to its most important relationships, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and turn on that bell notification so you never miss coverage like this. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what is happening to American influence in the most important region of the 21st century. And drop a comment below. This community's voice matters, and the conversation about America's strategic future is one we need to be having together. Thank you for your time, for your attention, and for your commitment to staying informed. Stay with this channel, because this story is far from over. As cited throughout.